Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the Celtic Down Under weekend review. My name is Anthony McGuire. I'm joined by Dave and Paul as we look at St Johnstone 1, Celtic 0. Our quest to seal the Premiership goes on another week or a couple of weeks. Frustration, but we'll get there. We've got varying views on the subject, and you will be hearing them all over the next hour. But before we do that, Dave, how was your weekend, mate?
Aye, good. Passed my driving test just before the weekend. So
congratulations.
So it's been an up and down weekend for me. Other than that, just keeping myself busy, usual stuff. Played golf for Friday as well. First time in years.
The weather's been quite nice. What club did you play? Where did you play?
The Cut up at Falcon.
Yeah.
So just a charity day with the Celtic club. Went really well. Made a donation to a local soup kitchen, local food kitchen,
nice.
Sort of stuff. So it's a good day, yeah.
Fantastic. That's really great. Paul, how'd you go?
Yeah, relatively tame weekend actually. We've had obviously I've not been on for the last couple of weeks. None of us were on after the derby for because I was at kneecap and I think Dave was at Paddy's Day celebration, so we weren't just skipping it because it was a poor result. We were otherwise engaged, and then last week I was a bit under the weather, which was probably partially self-inflicted from burning the candle at both ends. So yeah, this weekend relatively tame. Obviously, you were kind enough to host me for the match last night, which that part of it was the company and the food was pleasant. The watching not so much, but obviously we'll get into that in a bit. But yeah, no, decent weekend. Relatively relaxed, which was well needed. So yeah, only the seems like I had a current theme of late. Only Celtic ruining the weekend, but yeah, we'll get into it.
Yes, no, the focus of the weekend was sports. So a very drab, boring Japanese Grand Prix, which was terrible. And then, yes, watching the Celtic, which was also terrible. But yeah, it's nice to catch up with Richard and Johnny and Paul and a few pizzas and nice night. But it would be nice if Celtic put out a performance when we actually all get together to watch the Celtic game, because I've realised every time I've caught up with people this season to watch a Celtic game, we've either lost or drawn. So yeah, apparently I think we can only win if I'm sitting on the couch by myself. Anyway, it was a nice kickoff time, a nice 7 p.m. Anyway, so that was the upshot of being in Perth. So that is that. But anyway, as it was. So obviously after Rangers got beat at Ibrox for the 5th time in a row, that's a new record for Barry and the boys. They gifted us the opportunity to basically win the league next week. Had we obviously won against St Johnstone and then beat Kilmarnock next week. So obviously that is no longer potentially on the cards unless Rangers slip up and then it's out of our hands, as it were. But all to play for. Home game, effectively, with St Johnstone selling 3/4 of the stadium to Celtic supporters. Beautiful sunny day. Full team for Brendan Rodgers to pick from. The only change being Norofsky being dropped for Austin Trusty, which we'll discuss that in a second. But I'm trying to go through the excuses or the reasons why you could look for a dip in performance. There was no midweek game. Full team to pick from, effectively. All right, a few players coming back from injury, but strong starting 11, decent bench. So it's a bit of a head scratcher. Obviously, St Johnstone, they're battling at the bottom of the table. They're trying to survive, and both the teams around them won the day before. So they were obviously had the bit between the teeth. But as far as excuses go, there wasn't really any. Dave, did you see this as a potential red flag? I mean, touch on that, and then I suppose the other thing to touch on is Norofsky a bit stiff being dropped out of the team?
We'll answer that first, and the answer is yes. Without a doubt, it's no better foot wrong. Trusty, we've obviously paid, or Brendan Rodgers has paid £6 million for, so you can see that he's his first choice. However, Trusty started okay, but he's not been great the past few weeks. That could be first season blues kicking in and nervousness and stuff like that. There's other things that I'll come to down the line, but in regards to seeing it as a red flag, no, I didn't see it as a red flag. I thought we would, especially after the result at Ibrox, I thought the team should be up for it. They've been flat for weeks, and the flat's the wrong word. They've not got out of second gear for weeks, that's what I said in the chat, and it's true. We haven't got out of second gear since the turn of the year. The only games we turned up in, I think, were the European games, and we specifically Bayern, the two Bayern games we turned up well in, and I think that's had an effect on the domestic form, as has the large lead. It's not something you want to happen. It should be worked on. Brendan Rodgers should be addressing it. The team should be addressing it. However, it does happen in football. And Brendan, I listened to his match analysis, the interview after the game yesterday, and he made the point that some players don't fully understand the uniqueness of the Glasgow teams, specifically Celtic for us, where no matter how big your lead is in the title race, you have to win games. You have to win each and every single game, and it's not seen as acceptable by some, not just in our own support, but by the media and things like that, to drop points at the bottom of the league. It's just not. That doesn't really happen anywhere else in the world. That kind of intensity, no matter how far ahead you are, you still have to win every single game. It's not for every single person, that type of mentality. It's not for every single footballer. That's not to say I don't think they're trying, because as some people have said on social media, they're not trying hard enough. I don't believe footballers go out there and don't try. I just think all of these things play a part in, the adrenaline of European football's gone, the intensity, the focus we had on that for 6 months, and we improved, we got better, and you're coming back and they just kind of go, okay. Plus the fact they've played a lot of football, physically and mentally, that takes its toll. But it is a worrisome trait that we've got in that in the past 3 months we've not got out of second gear. I listened to some other podcasts and some other. I looked at a lot of social media last night, and there's a lot of people overreacting, which will come to the ins and outs of that later on. But I'm not worried about it over the course of the rest of the season. We'll pick up the 2 wins we need. I don't see us having a problem with St Johnstone at Hampden. And I think that, and just as an aside to that, Aberdeen beat us, and 2 weeks later we beat them at Hampden, or beat them in the Hampden 6-0. Hibs beat us, and then 2 weeks later we beat them in the Cups, and then it's happened again with St Johnstone. Maybe it's just one of those things that's happened this season, that the team we're coming up against in the Cup is just is the team that's turned us over. These weird things happen now and again, and all of that is just conspired, I think, and that's the way it is. I'm not overly concerned about it.
All right. Well, this will be an ongoing topic of discussion throughout the podcast, so we'll keep touching back onto sort of form. So, Paul, we were obviously talking about it last night. You felt that Narosky, steal your thunder, but you felt Narosky was a bit hard done by, especially in these performances that he's had. Did you sort of predict how we were going to roll out yesterday, or are you just as surprised as the rest of us?
Well, no. Despite the fact that it's now become a bit of a trend that we start games slowly, lose an early goal, and where we've lost an early goal, it's now the third time it's happened. We've lost an early goal, and then we've not been able to turn it around. Nearly turned it around with Hibs. Should have probably turned it around with Rangers, and we should have. I'm going to be really harsh on this on the team in this discussion, justifiably, I think. But that's not to say that they didn't create enough chances to win the game. They created enough chances to win the game 2 or 3 times. A lack of composure and some great goalkeeping was probably what, a mixture of what did it. But that doesn't give them a get out of jail free card for how they're turning up. It's a trend. Dave's right. They're not getting out of second gear. A lot of them are in cruise control now that Europe's over. Some of them are ready for the off. it tells you, yep, absolutely agree with Heavy Vibes. That's exactly what's happened. They've put their feet up. It's unacceptable. I'll get to some of Roger's comments in a bit. But going back to Nawrocki, let's get it, try and keep it on track on the team and the start of the game. I think he's extremely hard done by. He's obviously not a favourite of Brendan Rodgers. He only got back in because of injury to Trusty in the derby, and Rodgers was probably shielding a young player in Dane Murray to maybe avoid a real bang to confidence if something happened to him and made an error or something happened. But Nawrocki was the best defender on the pitch. That the bar wasn't high in the derby. They were all shocking, to be honest. Certainly the back five, but Nawrocki was solid, no mistakes. He was better again last week at Hearts. He had a starting point in 2 of the goals. And for me, the thing that I really liked about Nawrocki, and I think he's the answer long term to the centre back issues? No, I don't. But he's been playing forward passes, brave enough to play between the lines, good execution on those passes, and giving midfielders a head start and opening up the game. And neither Trusty or CCV have been doing that of late. You saw it again yesterday, back and forth between them, back to fullbacks, back into them. St Johnstone were happy to let them have the ball high up the pitch because they're not going to do anything with it other than wait for Callum McGregor to pick it off their toes and hope that he can do something. Nawrocki was actually able to push decent passes. Nothing sort of, he's not Del Piero or, he's not pulling out ridiculous passes, but he's playing 10, 15 yard straight up vertical passes through the lines and picking players out, and they're getting themselves on the half turn in space, higher up the pitch, and able to start attacks in a better position. And I just think he's extremely hard done by. There was no pace in that St Johnstone front line. That's the one thing you worry about with Nawrocki, that somebody's going to run in behind him and he's not the quickest. There was no danger on that basis. Just wasn't. They wanted to make it physical. And after they scored, they were happy to play in front of us. So, yeah, I think he's extremely unlucky not to play. I take Dave's point. We spent a lot of money on Trusty. But, he obviously wasn't quite fit for starting last week, so he started on the bench. And to me, you've got to give players a bit of a reward for a performance. What's the point in putting in 2 back-to-back good performances at a time in the season when the hard work is done, right? Like, you can rotate the squad, and if a player's playing well, even if he's not your normal first choice, he deserves to keep the jersey. And for the most part, Rodgers has done that. He's been I thought he was extremely ruthless with Nawrocki. Like, up until this point, if Trusty's had a few good games and then made a mistake, Scales has got the jersey. If Scales has had a few good games, he's made a mistake, it's gone back to the other player. Nawrocki hasn't put a foot wrong in those 2 games, and I think he deserved to start. And I do think, and it's easy to be, smart after the fact, I do think he would have made a difference, because he would have played passes into the midfield, higher up the pitch. McGregor wouldn't have been having to come so deep and would have been on the front foot with more players in their forward third more quickly, and the game would have been opened up a little bit. And I think the problem as the game wore on was it just got super congested in the middle, and we continued to try and play through the middle. We didn't use the wide areas. I understand why you wouldn't whip crosses in high for Maeda, but we never really got any crosses in for him. He can buzz around. We got nearly no crosses in after Adam Ida came on, which was madness to me. And yeah, we just played into their hands. And yeah, we carved a few chances, in the second half with the amount of ball we had, as you would expect, players coming off the bench hungry. But yeah, as I said earlier, between Inspire Keeper's performance and some really pretty poor finishing and pretty rushed, uncomposed forward play, we kind of got what we deserved, which is absolutely nothing.
Just bring some of the comments in, guys. So we've got who's the snitch, gentlemen? Hail to you, sir. Henrik McLarson just saying here, laughing Saturday, greeting Sunday. Not a great weekend. I know it's always better when it's the other way around. At least you can get some solace of the fact that the Huns drop points as well. It's not so great when it's the other way around. And then Henrik McLarson was saying here, the pitch as a possible reason. Yes, that's probably the one thing I didn't touch on, was the fact that yes, the pitch did look a bit heavy, but it's heavy for both teams. So, I mean, yes, it's a bit of a leveler maybe to Celtic's usual silky passing, but the pace just wasn't in the passing to begin with. So the ball wasn't bobbling and going out the park and it was miscontrolled. It was just being played in at such a pedestrian pace, the horseshoe of death, the usual, 5 or 6 passes between the centre halves and the goalkeeper before we even moving the ball into their half. And that trend continued in parts of the second half as well. So it wasn't just the first half performance. So, Brendan Rodgers obviously discussing the fact that he felt that some players in the team are too comfortable. I think for me, the biggest criticism in that first half isn't a lack of effort, but a lack of urgency around moving to create the space that creates the chances for us to then expose teams out wide or to play Maeda in. It was just too static too often. Players looking up, expecting someone to make a run, and then that run not being made. I think some of the, I'm going to say some of the culprits in that first half were the two that got dragged at halftime. So Schlupp and Kuhn. Kuhn, it's starting to become a little bit of a troublesome trend, and we can discuss that at some point, through the podcast. But I felt, Schlupp didn't have a great game either, and obviously was taken off for Greg Taylor. But that's he's put on some decent performances at least. But Kuhn's probably been off the ball for a while. But again, when your wide players for Celtic aren't functioning, that seems to really have a real deleterious effect on the rest of our team in terms of being able to create chances, and particularly when St Johnstone are so strong down the middle of the spine and very clustered defensively in the middle of that park. The only way you're going to get any relief is to get out wide, and we just didn't move the ball quick enough. We weren't, there was just no real avenues or opportunities. Interesting that the St Johnstone manager put Dre Wright in at left back. He's right-footed. He's never played left back before, but you have to say he marked Kuhn out the game in that first half. I mean, Kuhn never really got a chance to cut in, and I think the reason was, well, if he cuts in, that's Dre Wright's stronger foot, and then he can show him the line. So I have to say the St Johnstone manager's probably done a wee bit of homework on us, and like I say, really nullified that threat. And it took us probably about 25 minutes to half an hour to realise that Jota was on the pitch and that we could play the ball into him. So, for me, tactically quite inept from Celtic, but architects of our own downfall, because, all right, we got a goal down, but just weren't really on it from the off. They wanted it more. They stuck the boot into to a degree, but we just didn't really sort of want it. And probably the other criticism overall the whole game, and I'll bring you guys in a second, is just I kind of felt there were times when the ball was bobbling in the box or the ball was whipped across the goal line. I just didn't feel at any point any of the Celtic players were throwing themselves 110% to get on the end of it. There's a one, obviously, the most obvious one in the first half is the Kuhn chance. And Maeda's done the hard work, ball's come across, and you're thinking Kuhn just has to just meet that with 100% effort, and it's in the back of the net. But somehow the St Johnstone defender slid in there, and great challenge, and fair play to the guy. But you just kind of felt that if we were really going at it, hell for leather, that was in the back of the net. Second half, there was one with Jota and Hatate at the back stick. Both of them didn't really bust their gut to get in the end of it. There's just a few chances like that. I'm going if we were really hungry and really wanted this, that ball would be in the back of the net. And that's not even the finishing. That's just getting into the right position, because the ball was put in a dangerous area, and it just didn't quite happen.
The other one, sorry, Anne, the other one like that was when Ida had a great touch and turn and got in on the angle, and really his only option was to shoot from a ridiculously tight angle, and the keeper made another save. But we looked at the replay thinking, oh, should he square that? And there wasn't really a passing line for a square. But if a player, and we spoke about it last night, if a player was willing to be busting a gut to make up, to be the extra man and get into the edge of the box, he had a pretty easy cutback, and then he basically got a tap in. But there was nobody else there. I think it was, I can't remember who was in at the back, but maybe Jamesy Forrest tried to get in at the back post, but he was literally the only support.
There was no one. There was no central midfielder.
Yang had been left behind. Okay, it was a quite direct ball that put Ida in, and it was nice to see it because we so rarely use that weapon. And with the pace we've got, you should be sticking the ball over the top and in behind more often. But yeah, exactly to that point, nobody busting a gut, nobody making the extra effort, and yeah, a bit of that kind of real intensity and drive. And there were other chances beyond the ones that were just badly finished.
Who's the snitch saying Rocky gets a raw deal from Rodgers? Yeah, I don't disagree with that one. And then Maesh just saying we had 21 chances, enough attacking contribution for 5 goals, but it was one of those days. And then Heavy Vibes just saying, well, we've had a few of those days lately. Yeah, I have to agree. I feel that, yeah, I think the second gear comment is probably fair. It's not that they're deliberately playing badly. I just feel like they've just maybe put the driver back in the bag, and they've pulled out the 4 iron and went, I'll just chip this up rather than give it a big whack with the 1 wood. Golfing analogy there for you, Dave. So Dave, let's talk about the goal, because we were trying to analyze it last night, and I've watched it back a few times. I was all trying to figure it out, but from what I can tell and some of the analysis that I've seen, Celtic are going for the zonal marking setup, which as a defender playing amateur football, zonal marking never worked for us. It's just people nipping in front of you or getting behind you. Professional football is different kettle of fish, obviously, but can you apportion any blame there, Dave? Is there anyone you think should have done better in that situation? Talk us through it.
Well, first of all, Schlupp shouldn't have been given the free kick away. There was absolutely no need to rush in like that.
That's a fair point. Yep.
He caught up with it. He caught up with the play. I don't know. It might have been Cal McGregor who was there as well. He didn't need to come in and take the boy's foot away, and it was a free kick. Second of all, I wouldn't have Hatate at the front post. I would have a taller player at the front post as a goalkeeper. Put that tall player at the front post and try and win the ball and put it out. Hatate is okay. He's 5'7", 5'8", something like that. He jumps. I think he could do a bit better. I think he could put a wee bit more of a stretch in his neck, but he is a small guy. The defender has an absolute clear run from about 12 yards. Runs across the front, runs across the defensive line and into space, and nobody tracks him. So, yeah, that's an issue with zonal marking. However, zonal marking is something used by elite managers, and they know more about it than we do. That's something that I tried to hold on to and say, well, I don't fully understand it. At amateur level, which we've all played and still play, you don't play that. You don't play that. Can you go and win that ball, then go and win it? It's as simple as that. But it's more complicated at the level. So I've got criticisms of the defenders and I've got criticisms of the setup. I think it's just again indicative of how we've started the past whatever it is, 10 games or something like that. We're just so slow in the build up, and we're letting teams get a foot into the game, which was something that we hadn't done in the first part of the season. And that's the criticism I've got for it. You can lose the odd goal. That happens, but you know what St Johnstone are going to throw at you. You know how they're going to play that game. You know they're going to try and get free kicks as close to our box as possible, whip them in hard and fast, and have their big guys go and attack it. So why are we not defending that better? I agree with the criticisms. Absolutely agree with the criticisms. But we need to be better. The team need to be better in that situation. They need to be more aware. And again, I think that the team takes justified criticism on this, but Brendan Rodgers needs to take a bit of this as well. He needs to change things. I wouldn't have set up against St Johnstone zonally in that particular position. Maybe a corner, we dealt with the corners not too bad. But in that free kick, in that angle, would maybe be going a wee bit more man marking, especially with somebody running for the edge of the box, because the ball's going to come in at a different angle than it comes for a corner. And you maybe no better putting somebody, even Engels, on that guy at the end of the box. As Engels is 6'1", he's going to maybe be able to physically hold them off a bit better. I just think there's mistakes all over it, to be honest, and I think it's indicative of where we're sitting at the moment in performance-wise.
Paul, it was a pretty venomous delivery. I mean, I think that's also what makes the goal. I mean, the Latvian boy, it's a good header, but I think the delivery pretty much puts it on a plate for him. He still has to header it, but it's a wicked delivery. I mean, it's a
great delivery, but Graham Carey's done that for years. Like, he's a veteran these days. He came through our youth. Every time we play against St Johnstone, the standout thing is his delivery from set pieces. That's not That's not news. It shouldn't be news to anyone. I agree with Dave. We shouldn't have been setting up zonally against them. For the most part this season, is in terms of how I've viewed it, we've been setting up man-to-man. We went man-to-man against Bayern. So, because we know we did, because Ali Johnson dropped his man because he was supposed to be on Kane and he wasn't. And then obviously that's where that home goal came from. So we know that we've been going man-to-man in big games. So I don't see why you chop and change that system throughout the season. To me, that's just daft. Like, if you've been playing man-to-man against the best in the world, you should offer your local competition the same respect. I've seen a lot of criticism of Hatate. It's absolutely not a chance any blame can be laid at Hatate. He's 5'8". The guy who scores is 6'2" and got the run on him. To Dave's point, either Hatate shouldn't be taking up that position, and if that's the case, that's the coaching team who set up. That's not decided just at the corner. That's pre-arranged. So that's the coaching team's problem. But you shouldn't be letting a 6'2" centre back just have a free run and free jump and free header. No one goes with him. So even if you've got a taller lad at the front post, yeah, he potentially does win that, but he's standing still and your man's got to run and jump at him. So he's still got the advantage. The zonal pickup, nobody was if you're running zones, you're supposed to be ready for people moving into your area. Even if you're waiting for somebody to move into your area, like I said, they've got the run on you. He's ran a good 10, 15 yards across the box from back to front on the angle. And I don't think even people notice until he's leaping and heading in the back of the net. Feel for Sinisalo, he can't really do much about it. It's just a really poor defensive setup. And as I say, we've been going man to man, and we're willing to do that against better teams. I think it's a bit of an insult to St Johnstone when you know that Graham Carey's got the delivery he's got, not to set up in a way that can defend that. And to leave a guy of 5'8" jumping stationary against a guy 6'2", you got what you deserve. It's just really poor. No, so we started poorly and slowly, and then we compound it by and again, this is not isolated incident. This is again and again we've defended set pieces poorly. Now, I called the defending against Bayern Munich at home for the Kane goal worse than schoolboy. At least you're playing the best in the world, right? It's no disrespect to St Johnstone, but they're not at the same level as Bayern Munich. So
the bottom of the league.
Well, they are, and we'll come on to my views
for
on
a reason.
Losing to the bottom of the league. But we've lost set piece goals all season, and to be honest, we've lost set piece goals for many seasons. It's an ongoing problem we haven't fixed. We don't make enough of our set pieces in the attacking third, and we definitely don't defend set pieces well enough in our own third. And after that, we leave ourselves to the mountain to climb, because Valakari's got them. They're still struggling, but there's been a marked improvement in performance since he came in. He's put a load of new players in January. He's managed to get a tune out of them. Yes, they're still struggling. But if we won yesterday, they're 8 points behind and dead and buried and gone. As it stands, both their rivals won the day before, and you think, well, they're dead and buried. They were 8 points behind. And then they beat us 5 points back. Goal difference not too bad. They've got to play all those teams that are around them. They could very easily stay up if they continue to play like that. And we said this last night to Anthony, there's no point in them beating us and then not maintaining that form through the split into the end of the season. But you'd like to think, if you're a St Johnstone fan, you probably think they're going to kick on from here and they should get a real shot in the arm from that result. Do I think they'll beat us in the cup? Nah, I think the wide open spaces of Hampden plus a boot up the arse from this performance and result will mean, to Dave's point earlier, we will bounce back. But we shouldn't have to keep bouncing back against these teams. There's been United was another one. We drew with them up 0-0 up there, and then we scalped them back at our place. And Dundee was the same. We got a draw against us, and we scalped them again at our place shortly thereafter. It's not good enough. There's been too many slack performances in the last few months, and Rodgers made some really strong comments across a number of interviews. I got some quotes I'll share later, but he's all well and good coming out with strong comments, and I was pleased to see them. But the buck stops with him. He sets the tone. He can come out and make commentary, but he needs to be in the dressing room and in the coaching rooms and on the coaching pitch and get this sorted, because there's no point.
Here's my issues, Paul, right? My issues are, you can very much verbatim, Rodgers every week before a game, we like to set the tone, we like to play our way, we like to be aggressive, He says the same thing at the start before, like the pre-match interview of every game every week. But too often, especially this year, calendar year 2025, that's not been the case. We're sort of 20, 25 minutes in, maybe a goal down, and it's like, oh, we're in a game. Oh, we need to lift it. It's like where's the just grabbing the game by the scruff of the neck from the first time? I can count maybe a couple of games this year, calendar year, where we've started like a house on fire and really driven teams out of the sword early doors, and you think, how many could it be? That's not really been the prevailing trend in 2025. Now, I came across this on Twitter today, but I'm sure other people have seen it. But in the last 15 games in the league, Hibernian have the best form of 29 goals scored, 12 against, 35 points. Celtic, second, 44 goals for, 17 against. So that means we're conceding more than a goal a game, 31 points. And then third, Rangers scored 37, conceded 22, 30 points. And you ask any Celtic supporter, you say that Rangers team are absolute dross. They're rubbish. They are one of the worst Rangers teams that they've had. You ask Rangers supporters, they're saying that. And our form in 2025 and a few games of 2024 is that we're only 1 point better off than them. So, we're sort of saying that they're the worst ever. And we are theoretically, and I say theoretically because it's not happened yet, theoretically cruising for a treble. But this kind of takes the gloss off it. It feels like we're just stumbling. We've had too much to drink, and we're sort of trying to get the key in the door, trying to get in the front door, trying not to wake the missus up, get in. And that's what it feels like. We're staggering. We're sort of
Mister.
No. It's just disappointing, Dave. I mean, how do you feel about it? Because I enjoy watching Celtic, but it's performances like last night, your head scratcher. It's like, as I said in the build up at the start of the pod, it's a home game. It's our fans. They've all paid £30 a ticket and gone up to Perth for the day in the sunshine to watch their team play. And it seems like we're out of the Champions League. We put in some good performances. Bayern Munich, League Cup's done. The league will be done when it's done, and we just have to rock up in 2 weeks against St Johnstone and beat them. But clearly, they've got the bit between the teeth now. So, I'm a bit deflated. I'm a little bit disappointed, and I think I've got every right to be because we shouldn't be losing games like that when there's no real reason or rhyme or reason to it. Look, it can happen, but I just feel it's happened too often. And that statistic, the fact that we're only 1 point better off than the Huns in the last 15 games, for me, you shouldn't be using them as a yardstick. Because if they are as bad as they say they are, as we all think they are, we should be miles ahead of that. And I know we did our work early in the season and we got a buffer, we got a points lead. I get all that. But we want to be setting our own standards, not looking at what they're doing and going, oh, well, we're just a bit better than them. Not good enough. Dave?
No, I don't really like those stats. They take a very micro part of the season and show up things that over the course of the 9-month season aren't as relevant as they look at in that one particular point. But having said that, I can understand the frustration, and I get the frustration as to why so many Celtic fans are saying, well, why are we now performing like this? Why all of a sudden? It's not, I say all of a sudden, since Christmas, since New Year, why has this laissez-faire attitude kicked in? Because that's what it seems like, and I get it. It's I agree with what you're saying, Anthony. It's going to come. Let's just get it done. Once it's done, it'll be okay. It's fine. But in the meantime, people are having to watch the games. Yeah, okay, people do pay their money and go away games and home games, a lot of money, and invest in the club in that way as well. And they should be entertained. But and maybe it's just how I process the information. That's sometimes how football goes. It doesn't go the way you want it to all the time. We have been I'll come back to that in a minute. Brendan Rodgers needs to deal with this. But I rate Brendan Rodgers as a manager. I think he's in the top 2 or 3% of managers that we're going to get. He's not in the top 2% of team managers in the world. He's in the top 2 or 3% of managers that we're going to get. He has good ability about making players better. He tends to win matches when he's been at Celtic, and he's given us some great times over his two terms with us. However, he has got blockages, and he needs to start taking responsibility for those. He does not know how to change tactics or refuses to do so. That is an arrogance within him. He is an arrogant guy. We've all heard the stories. But he has got an arrogance within him that his way is the only way to play the game. Sometimes, especially in our type of league and the domestic competition that we come up against, you need to be able to change that. I had a frustration with Martin O'Neill about it as well. Martin O'Neill, who had a better team than Brendan Rodgers has got, he had better players in that team, did not know how to change from the 3-5-2 system. And if it didn't work, which wasn't often, but if it didn't work, he had no clue how to change it. It was like for like, very similar to Brendan Rodgers, makes the changes in 62 to 65 minutes, brings the same player on for the same position. We were not using the wings yesterday. We should have been. I agree with that 100%. We should have been getting to the wings quicker, but we were not. So the manager needs to change something to get the ball out there quicker. How is he going to do that? I don't know. Maybe, I've said more than once, bring on an extra central midfielder, put somebody next to Callum McGregor in that situation where it gives you just that wee bit extra body in there. Maybe go 2 up front and 2 out wide, make it a kind of 4 up there so that the defenders have got somebody extra to deal with. I don't know enough about tactics and shape to say that I know more than Brendan Rodgers, but change something to give St Johnstone something else to think about, because that is what he doesn't do. Because when those teams are drilled well and we're not playing at the level we should be, it looks easy for them. And that's what that first half looked like yesterday. It looked easy for St Johnstone. We did not give them anything to worry about in that first half. And so I think a lot it has to sit with Brendan Rodgers, and he has to start taking responsibility for the malaise that's setting in. It seems to be setting in. And considering the fans and considering the guys that do the podcasts and the guys that write the blogs and the guys that say, well, hold on a minute, what is actually happening here? Because you're spending a lot of money, an awful lot of money. Money that no Celtic fan has, no Celtic manager has ever been given before. And we can't get the level of the gears to move up quick enough in the second half of the season. I do think there can be an overreaction at times, but I also agree with the actual principle behind the overreaction, and that there's a frustration there, and it doesn't look good. And even the home games just now they're no great, it's not as if we're flying in all cylinders and scoring 3-4 goals at home and we're having a problem away from home. It's not like that. And I think there's options there that he doesn't use, and there's things that he just won't countenance. And every time there's a problem, it's, well, we need to be better. Well, sometimes maybe the limitations are too much to be better, and he won't consider that.
We'll come back to possible changes as we head towards the weekend. Paul, I'll come to you in just a second, mate, but I'll just sort of say, McLaughlin P's doing my work for me, saying click that like button. Yes, good reminder. Thank you. Please like and subscribe to the episode. It helps other like-minded Celts find us online. So yeah, your help is greatly appreciated. And I know we're up against some heavy-hitting podcasts at the start of our show. It's just the unfortunate time zone that we are in, where we butt up against some of the big boys. But feel free to watch us on delay tomorrow when you're on your meal break. Just digest it, just to sort of put this one behind us and move on to the weekend. But Franny McKeown just sort of saying here, might need to make some changes, and I think we'll definitely touch on that before we end the show. And then the other sort of question that's been posited here is that, do we have players in the team who were promised to move in January and are now doing a French Eddie, and they're sort of just put the slippers on and just waiting for the transfer window to open in June? Paul, so I went on a bit of a tangent there, apologies. What are your thoughts? Are we spoiled Celtic fans and we should just take a medicine because Johnson were just better than us on the day, or is there fundamental issues that we have here that need to be addressed? Where do we sit? Where are we at? What's your thoughts?
Like if it's a one-off, I'll take it as a one-off, but it's clearly not a one-off. We've lost the Huns twice and put in a bad performance in the cup final and got out of jail with a penalty shootout. We've lost to Hibs. We've drawn with Dundee. We've drawn with Dundee United. And we've got beaten to the bottom team. Now, let's be clear. The bottom side in the Scottish Premier Football League hasn't won against the top team since 2013. I think it was Dundee beat Hibs, so it must have been early in the season. And Celtic, as the top team in the league, haven't lost to the bottom team in 20 years. 2 decades, a Celtic side at the top of the league has not lost to the bottom place side. So you can call it an overreaction. You can say
apparently Scott Allen was in that starting lineup. Apparently,
right.
So there you go.
So in the Hibs game, in the Hibs team that lost,
I think he meant the Celtic game. I think he.
I don't think he's that sad long. I think that's
probably maybe it was the Hibs game.
Maybe in the Hibs team that lost. Anyway, they are pretty damning stats, and I take all the points that we are. At a point where the season's pretty much done. But Rodgers has made a few comments yesterday which were like, I think they were about as damning as you could make them without actually handpicking names and saying he's not at it. He made some comments about we should be winning the best way you can, not just chugging over the line. We want to be sprinting over the line. Teams I've had here have sprinted over the line. You go hard and you go hard for the whole season until it's done. That we're not doing that. We've and to the point, I think McLaughlin P are the players that were promised a move in January. I don't necessarily think so, but I think there are players that are, if they aren't guaranteed, if they haven't been told they can leave in the summer, they're certainly expecting to be working their ticket in the summer. And after Bayern Munich, they feel like they've got very little to play for, so they've got the slippers on and they are putting it in. They're phoning it in, and too many Celtic players are phoning it in, and you can't phone it in at Celtic. And I take this point earlier about, things happen in football. People don't, it's only in Scotland you expect it to win every game. Well, I don't give a shit. We're in Scotland. That's the standard at Celtic.
That's the reality.
We're very, 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 very lucky they're as bad as they are, because the amount of drop points we've had in the second half of the season, if they were even vaguely competent, we'd have a title race. The fact we don't have a title race is because they're shockingly bad. But to the point, in 40% of the season, the last 40% of the season, 15 games out of 38 is 39 and a bit percent. So nearly 40% of the season, we're 1 point better off than them. So we think there's this massive gulf, and there is. We created that gulf at the start of the season. And they've got, don't get me wrong, there is a big gulf when it really comes down to it. But we've been poor against them head to head in the last 2 games, 3 if you want to make an argument. Yeah. And we're now dropping points, not just to middle of the table teams or top half teams. We're now losing games that in any other season recently, you would say was completely unacceptable. So whilst I don't think the wheels are going to come off, obviously we're going to win the title. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if we win the title next week. I could see us beating Killie, and I could see Aberdeen turning Rangers over at Pittodrie, and then the title's handed to us. Oh, not handed to us. We've won it over the course of the season, but we don't get to celebrate with a win that we take it. So it's a bit of an anticlimax. And that's one of my other key grievances about this. You can say, there's plenty of points in the bank. We had an opportunity. They handed us an opportunity on a silver platter, gift wrapped. Go beat the bottom side, and you can win the title at home in a lunchtime kickoff next week.
Before the split.
Before the split. And a team that's, should be going on to win the treble, they should have been absolutely gunning for that. You should be going, this is absolutely brilliant. Let's get out there, blow them away in the first half, 2-3, 4-0 up at half time. We can rotate the second half. We can cruise in, and then we'll go and beat Killie next week, and we've won the title. To put out a first half performance like that is absolutely atrocious. It really is. And people can say I'm overreacting, but we've got to look at the context of the whole thing. Context is really important. You're handed an opportunity to go win the title, and you put in a meek and timid performance like that in the first half. Players in second gear, players not gunning for it, no intensity. Where is it? like the Kuhn's a perfect example, right? He's been off the boil, apart from the Bayern Munich games where he lifted his game, he's been off the boil most of the second half of the season. This is a guy who was basically a shoe-in at Christmas for every player of the year going, and his form has dropped off a cliff. I saw somebody messaged me today going, Nicholas Kuhn's wisdom teeth must be growing back. Which
it was Chris Boyd that said it on Sky yesterday.
He said, well,
exactly
I didn't know it was him. I didn't know it was him. I didn't like fair play to him because that's actually quite funny. He's a shadow of the player he was first half of the season, and you can only assume he's got his feet up. Like he's rested on his European performances and his first half of the season performances, and he's angling or he's expecting to get a move in the summer. Not good enough for me. He got hooked. He should be dropped. I'd start Yang, I'd start Jota on that side and play me out on the other side. I'd start Forrest against Kelly. Like,
well, I'd say
we haven't touched much of this.
Just get back to the game for 2 seconds. I think James Forrest was probably the
one
player who actually.
I was just about to say, like to get back to the. I was just about to say to get back to the game. James Forrest, when he came on, was pretty much the only bright spark. Like, you showed that old head experience where. Yeah, he's maybe lost a yard of pace, but he's much sharper up top than he was in his younger days. He was direct. He was clean. On another day, he could have had a couple. I think he's a bit unlucky with the one that the keeper saves low down. I think most of us expect if you arrive on the end of a cross at pace and you hit the target at that pace, 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to score. Just the keeper got himself in a good position, and anywhere else he probably does. But managed to lift it. It goes in, and then he cuts in and he hits a pretty tame shot down the middle. He picks a corner and it goes in. But yeah, I thought James Forrest looked a bright spark, and I think we'll see some good stuff at him towards the end of the season. But yeah, there's too many players just slippers on, and as far as I'm concerned, not acceptable. And I was surprised at Rodgers' after-match comments. I think they were as strong as we've seen from him in a long, long time.
Yeah,
I'll just give you a couple others. He said. Poor start to the game, not the first time. It's certainly something we'll look at in the summer. So that tells you there's players that he's had enough of, and he's only persevering with them because he hasn't got the depth. He said, if you're comfortable, you can become a bit timid. 100% that's aimed at Nicholas Kuhn. To your point, Anthony, he was timid going in for that chance in the first half. He didn't really go for it and let the defender in. We've got some players going in looking for an easy game. If that's the case, they should be nowhere near the starting 11. And this is the one that goes back to my original point about it's not an overreaction to say we should be winning that game. Is it doesn't matter if you're 13 points or 3 points. It's not enough. We cannot use that as an excuse. It's happened too many times. And to Dave's point, it's happened too many times on his watch. So he needs to be doing something about it.
Yeah, and that's the sorry, Anthony. That's where he hit like some you said earlier, Paul. The buck stops with him. He has to fix this, and like I say, when I was listening to some of the other pods yesterday and today, it was like it's not acceptable, but it's a perspective. Look, it can happen, and it shouldn't be happening. Nobody's saying it should be allowed to happen, but it can happen, and I just think. Under Brendan Rodgers as well, it's not really. He's right. It has not really happened before because his first 2 seasons, we made sure we were strong towards the end of the season. He always said that this was the most important part of the season because this is the run and this is where you get it done and this is where you have the enjoyment and everything else for the fans as well as the team. And last season as well, we didn't start well as we know, but we powered through the middle part of the season and we absolutely finished flying last season as well. We finished really well because we got over the line and we got the games done. For some reason, it's just flipped. Is it just a quirk? I don't know. I will say this: it wouldn't surprise me now if they come out and win the next 6 games, and blow teams away, because this result has been coming. Although we get beat for Rangers twice. But we were unlucky in the second game against Rangers in the sense that we probably should have won it in the second half, although we were very, very poor in the first half. And then the Hibs game as well, the goal gets chopped off and we probably go and win it if that goal is allowed to stand. But this result and this performance of yesterday, I say this, the one yesterday, has been coming. We didn't deserve to win yesterday. I accept that. We could have won. We wouldn't have deserved it, but we could have won it with the chances in the last 15 minutes. And that's what Rodgers has to change. He has to, rather than throwing his players under the bus, which is what he's done. And I'm not against that in principle. You know, sometimes you have to be straight and say, look, you aren't good enough, or you're not performing well enough, or whatever it is. But he has to also accept that he's allowed this to happen. Is that because he's put too much focus on European football and making that step up, which means going away to St Johnstone isn't very attractive to some players, which, you know, you can't have, and you're not going to be able to get players up if they're kind of being, if that's even implied in the dressing room, that you know it's all about European football and making this up and getting this up and getting up to that level. And we've done well against Bayern Munich and X, so that's great. That's great. Players are human beings at the end of the day. There could be, I know a couple of people I seen yesterday were blaming the board, and it's the board's fault for no spending money, and we should have replaced Kyogo. But we've not missed Kyogo yet. Yesterday, would Kyogo have made a difference yesterday? I'm not entirely sure. Have we just got players that they're just, I don't want to say journeymen or mercenaries, but are they just guys that don't have, again, another unique part of Celtic and the Glasgow football culture is they don't have the heart that the fans demand they have for the club. You know, they're footballers, they're players that are in it to make a career out of it. And it comes a point sometimes where they've had 2 or 3 seasons at a club and they go, that's enough, I want to go somewhere else. We Celtic fans will say, no, I'll stay my career at Celtic if I'm a footballer. But that's not really how it works realistically. You've also got agents in play. Our agents whispering in players' ears and going, you can get a bigger move. You can get a bigger move here. There's something on the table for you in the summer.
I suppose the thing, Dave, is that, like, you know, Celtic's seen as potentially as a stepping stone into the EPL and all the rest of it. But I guess Kyogo's the prime example of the grass isn't always greener. I'll just bring a couple of more comments. Just sort of saying here, love it saying, for me, Maeda should have stayed on and Rocky shouldn't have been dropped. I think that's the consensus on the panel here. And you can't take your top goal scorer off and probably player of the year. It's crazy. Yeah, I think I personally would have found a way to keep him on and bring Ida on, play 2 up top, put Maeda out wide, maybe take Jota off. I don't know. I just kind of feel.
Can I ask you both?
Yeah.
So can I just ask a question? Because I thought about this with when we was making that sub about Ida, I was thinking the same thing. That's where I got the idea. Go 4 up top. Whoever it is on the left, James Forrest done well when he came on the left for Jota, so fine. I'm happy with James when he came on. Yang was done all right on the right when he came on. But why not just play Ida with Maeda just off him and just launch the ball up to Ida and try and get the flick on? Do you know what? It's not exactly the way Rodgers wants to play, but it changes the dynamic of the game for the last 10, 15 minutes. And we showed that we could make chances in the last 10. We made the chances in the last 50. So maybe that kind of physicality would have just thrown them off their game. But they still held the same shape in the last 10, 15 minutes. They would have had to have changed it if we'd have went 4 up front and just dropped to 1 or 2 in the middle. Why don't we have that? I'd have rather done that and went for it and lost 2-0 because we maybe had a bit of space with the left space in the midfield. But at least then we'd have maybe given them something to think about. Because I
think you could have. I mean, you quite easily could have taken a centre half off at that point because they weren't exactly pushing for it either. But anyway, a lot of what ifs. But I guess we were at Kilmarnock this week, Paul. Anyone you see making a potential start in place of players that have maybe underperformed? I mean, I'm scratching my head going why Bernardo didn't get an opportunity to come on for Engels. I just felt that game was tailor-made for someone like him. He's a bit more physical, likes to break the lines, we're running with the ball. I just kind of felt that why didn't he get on? So is there an issue there with his fitness, or did just, again, Rodgers choosing to go with McCowan over him? But
yeah, no, you could make any number of changes, Anthony. I would, Kuhn can't start as far as I'm concerned. So, rotate. Like I say, I'm not bothered whether you put Maeda on the wing and start Ada through the middle. I potentially would do that and play Jota on the right. Equally, you could leave Maeda through the middle. The other thing, and I saw a couple of people mention the comments, and I did think to myself, is we don't know. Maeda might have a little bit of a niggly knock because when you're chasing a goal and a guy scored 30 goals and 10 in the last 7 or whatever, you'd expect to find a way to get him on. So obviously they get a lot of data flowing to them from the chips in the shirts and all of that. So maybe that was a precaution which you'd want, because he's going to be absolutely crucial in the few games that we need to get a treble. So you don't want to risk him. I don't know. Like I touched it briefly, and I've said it here before and elsewhere as well. Is we've got a real problem between the centre backs and Callum McGregor. McGregor has to play so deep because the centre backs aren't willing to play, or can't, or aren't willing, or aren't instructed to play forward, like vertical passes through the lines, even 5, 7, 10 yards. When Engels played that role in the derby, and we haven't discussed this because obviously we didn't do a show, but I've mentioned it elsewhere. Engels was sitting 5 to 10 yards higher up than McGregor usually sits, and all he was asking for from CCV was to play a straight vertical pass into him. So he had it on the half turn, he had his head up, he was already into the opposition half, and he could get forward. And CCV was reluctant to play it, absolutely reluctant to play it. And there was a point early in the second half, Engels was screaming at him to play it into him, and he refused, and he pushed it out to Johnston, and he came back and he pushed it across to Nawrocki. So we've got a real disconnect when your centre backs, when McGregor has to come back and take it off the toes of the centre backs. There's a big massive gap either for him to drive into or to push it long, or the more higher midfielders, Engels and Hatate for the most part, they've got to drop a bit deeper to connect the game. And you're just getting a bit strung out. So look, I'm not sure. You could.
Do you know what it shades off, Paul? The way you just described that there was kind of like Scott Brown's last season with Rodgers before he left. Scott Brown was literally on the toes of Ayer and Bayata, whoever the centre halves were then, and literally taking off their toes. And you're sort of scratching your head going, why are we playing like this? And McGregor is pretty much doing what Brown was doing back then. It's like deja vu.
But back then, I think it was down to Bruni's fitness to some degree. Like, he didn't have the legs at that point, and he was well into his 30s. McGregor's clearly got the legs. Like, we saw him against Hearts last week. He gets the ball higher up the pitch. He's on the half turn. He's got his head up. He's sliding in Marietta with a brilliant pass. He's capable of playing in that slightly higher. He could still play the 8 probably, but we've not got the confidence in anyone else to play the 6. So that's a bigger issue, I think, and it's something we need to look at because he's not going to be around forever. But yeah, in terms of rotation, you could like, I see people saying get GT on. I thought he was pretty poor when he came on. He got himself booked for descent. He got himself positionally caught on the odd times they were up the pitch. He had an opportunity late in the game, and he's got great delivery. He had an opportunity to throw the ball in the box. You've got Ida, you've got others in there, and he chose to stop and push it back and kill the momentum. And then they've got themselves in a better shape. I think GT had a poor game off the bench, and Schlupp didn't cover himself in glory, but he's been good up to this point. Now, would I sign him? I've been confident that we would, if there was an offer there at the right price, maybe we should sign him. Yeah, we're still up in the air a bit on that now after a couple of sort of less great performances, but he would be back in the team for me. You could rotate any number of the front 5, 6, knowing that you've got those other guys to come back in. And I just think if you sit somebody on the bench, you see what their attitude's like. Either they'll be a bit stung and they'll go up and they want to come up and when they get the 20, 30 minutes, they'll come roaring off the bench and prove a point, or they won't. And if they won't, they're not Celtic class and they need to be getting moved on. It's and we've kind of alluded to it and touched on it. At Celtic, it's just as much about attitude as it is about ability. You absolutely need the ability, but if your attitude's not right, sling your hook, as far as I'm concerned. Like, you are expected to win every single week, because at some point, potentially, you lose one game, you've lost the title. That's what we used to. What we used to have to deal with, and that's why the mentality isn't like that just for a laugh. Because we've got a harsher limit than anyone else. It's because historically, if you lose a game or two, you probably lose the league. Look at the Tommy Burns season, right? We're going back a long time there. Nearly never lost a game, but lose the title, heartbreaking stuff. But that's why the mentality is like that. And if players haven't got that mentality or don't want to work towards that mentality, they shouldn't be here.
I just think,
right, Dave. Last word. You've got 2 minutes. Go.
Just thinking what Paul was saying there about, I'd seen a comment yesterday about CCV, and I thought it was quite harsh, but listening to what Paul's saying, I'm thinking, well, I noticed yesterday at the game at one point, CCV and Trusty were coming up the pitch, and I think CCV was telling him to push forward a little bit, like Trusty, to give him the ball, or Trusty was doing it, I'm going there type of thing. And I was thinking, why is it no either going in direct to somebody in the midfield, because the midfield will be further up the pitch, to maybe switch it out right or left quickly? Why does it have to be going to the defender every time? And I'm wondering if that's CCV that's the problem. For all he's strong, doesn't he lose much in the air, all that sort of stuff. He does. Now that you think about it, I'm wondering, does he just play the safe option far too much? And that's not the game we play. We need to be playing quicker and moving. So I wonder if that, and does that lead to maybe there's some issues in the dressing room? People saying we should be doing this in the pitch, doing this in the pitch. I don't know. Is that what's causing the problems on the pitch? Because you're right, Paul. Now that you say that, it's absolutely clear in my mind that we are disconnected. Callum McGregor is far too close to the defenders too much of the time. And you're right, when he's that deep, where are Engels and Hatate? And when you're having to pass the ball that extra 5 or 10 yards up the pitch, it makes the half turn a lot harder because you've got somebody right up your backside. Because Engels, there was a couple of times I seen that with Engels yesterday. He came and the ball went at his feet, and he didn't want to turn the half turn because he knew there was somebody there. So he either went back the way or he went kind of back out wide too meekly. So maybe, but again, going back to the managers got to sort that out for the last 6 games of the season, plus a semi-final and a cup final. Because if we don't I think we'll win the league. No matter what, we'll get 2 victories somewhere. But there's no guarantee in a semi-final and a cup final that it's definitely going to work.
Well, I feel like an anticlimax. If we don't win a treble from here, we're going to feel like it's a massive anticlimax to the season, and we're going to walk away feeling, feeling flat.
But think about how. Sorry, one last thing. Think about how winning a double is an anticlimax.
Well,
that's where we are. I get that, but
context is everything, though.
Yeah,
it's because, and this is where your rivals play a part, because they're already out of that competition. So it's like, you've got to take that opportunity when they've given it to you. You've got to go and finish it and win a treble. But anyway, we'll table that discussion, because obviously we've got the cup game in a fortnight's time. We've got a league game Saturday night, primetime viewing, Celtic versus Kilmarnock. We'll be back next week to cover that one. Sorry, I clicked the wrong comment. Shit, hang on. Comments are moving too quickly. A lot of comments, a lot of chat tonight. It's really good, lads. That's why CCV didn't make it in the Premiership. He's hopeless with the ball at his feet. That's my old man. He just says what he's thinking. But we'll leave that one there. Man of the match this week, I'm going to give it to Andy Fisher, the St Johnstone goalkeeper. He played a blinder, and he got them that 3 points because he pulled 9 excellent saves, didn't put a foot wrong, and you've got to take it off your cap when necessary. He's maybe given his team an opportunity to stay in the league next season. So we'll obviously, I'll be quite keen to watch how they go for the rest of the season, because if they put performances like that, you just never know. Dave, any recommendations for us this week?
What I'll do is, I mentioned a few weeks ago, a friend of mine, Mark Williamson, from an organisation called Sweet for Addicts, who puts on plays around about addiction and other social issues in Glasgow. His group has some tickets left this Thursday and this Saturday at the Brunswick Theatre, I think, or is it it's on Brunswick Street, maybe? Hold on. Yep. I'll just get the details. But anyway, that's on this week. There's tickets left. If you go to the Sweet for Addicts website, and that's all you have to put in, sweetforaddicts.com, you'll get the links and you'll get the tickets. It's an absolutely fabulous night. It's not too expensive, and you help the local community and local social enterprises and people making themselves better emotionally, physically, and psychologically. So please do that. Sweet for Addicts, yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. Paul, and for us this week, mate?
Yeah, musical recommendation this week. So album actually from back in 2020. Matt Berninger, better known as the lead singer of The National, who I'm a massive fan of. He has solo material in 2020 called Serpentine Prison. I went back and sort of got into this on the back of his latest single, which is called Bonnet of Pins. Bonnet of Pins is the lead-off single for his second solo album, which will be out next month. And if we're still on air at that point, I think we might be finished by that point. But if there's still a game around after that, then I'll be recommending that album, no doubt, that week. But yeah, Matt Berninger, lead singer of The National. If you're into The National and that kind of thing, check out his 2020 debut solo album, Serpentine Prison. Worth a listen. And downbeat, so probably useful after the weekend we've just had.
Building up to the next weekend, Paul. Go over it and move on to the next one. So it'll be Saturday before we know it. I've got a TV show that I watched with my wife last week, Rivals. It came out last year. It's on Disney Plus. David Tennant, Danny Dyer, Aidan Turner. Just about a guy trying to run a TV station, and it's set in the 80s. Very good liquid laugh. Lots of rooting, if that's your thing. But it's not bad entertainment if you want to check that one out. We'll be back next week. Celtic versus Kilmarnock. We'll be back at our usual time, 8 p.m. Western Standard Time in Perth, WA. So that's what time in Scotland, Paul?
7 hours just now, isn't it?
1
p.m.
Celtic half time. So join us. If you can't join us, watch us later. If you can join us, get in the comment section. It's been really, really good with a chat tonight. Obviously, a lot to talk about, a lot to discuss. We've gone over our hour, so we've done pretty well. So thank you both, Dave and Paul, as we dissected that. And we'll be back next week. Hail, hail.
Hail, hail.
Guys, thanks. Hail, hail.